Do lighting colors change with various forms of entertainment, and how as you design for them? John, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I have a certain color style that kind of carries through from the different forms. It's I like to call it use every color you possibly can. But no, yeah, it changes for me. You know, the musicals, you know, backlight gets very saturated, and, you know, high side gets very saturated. Plays and stuff like that, I kind of lean more towards, you know, more open colors, but still finding ways to do saturation on the psych and stuff like that. And then as far as what were the other?
Well, you have, you know, dramas, dance, musical theater, rock and roll.
Rock and roll, obviously. Every color that you can possibly use. I also am a big fan of dirty colors as well for especially kind of scary and sad shows. Rich, can you go to one of the Boneyard slides? It's the first one, I think. Yep. So this set right here, this show took place, it's called Boneyard Prayer. It was original piece by Red Moon Theater. And the whole set was dirt. It was just dirt everywhere. So I felt that the amber range really kind of captured the dirty quality. And when I wanted to, quote-unquote, warm up the action and stuff like that, where you would, you know, commonly, you know, push your ambers or push your warm colors, I found that pushing the blues, that the 4400 that I was using, that made the feeling happier and everything within that sort of setting. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, we tend to stick with, actually we don't stick with anything. It's like Kevin was saying earlier, each show, each event, everything is so different. And the hardest question is, so many people, what's your favorite color? Well, it depends on the show, really. And it's the same thing. Do we always approach a play the same way? No, not at all. We use saturated colors in both plays, musicals, dance. We use more pale colors in, you know, less saturated colors in all of those too. It really depends on the piece, what it's calling for, how you want to grab your audience. Michael and I really like to bring the show, not bring the lights out into the audience, but having the lights pull you in. We don't want the lights to be a distraction to the production. And I think that's one of the things, it's kind of like how we approach color as well, but it's also, you know, yeah, you might see a little less saturation in the straight dramas, a little bit more color, a little bit more wow, magical feeling in the musicals. And then rock and roll, we do some concerts and tend to use a lot of color, a lot of saturation, a lot of bold choices. And I know this isn't mentioned because this isn't really the topic, but we do use a lot of templates too, which we use color in those templates to texture the light, basically. And that's also an important factor. In almost all these pictures you'd see textured color of some sort.
And I think in general for us, in discussing this question, we did kind of think that for the most part, as you kind of touched on, we do kind of, the straight dramas tend to be a little bit less saturated and more saturated as we get to musical theater and rock and roll. But there's always going to be exceptions to those, if you can call them rules. We just did a production of Beauty and the Beast, which you...
Castle After Wolves?
Which, yeah, as a musical, first thought is big and bright, and much of this show was really dark, actually. You can kind of see in the background all the blues and greens and purples on the set. And except for when we had to light faces, obviously the whole show, but we kept it isolated to the less saturated colors and really went with some dark colors for a lot of the show. So that's just an example of an exception to the rule, which there is always going to be.
And when we do opera is a different beast altogether. We like to light obviously the scenery usually is bigger than one can ever imagine in opera. And you know, a lot of lighting goes towards and a lot of color goes towards that. But we tend to be a little bit more bold, a little more starker, especially with the more non-comedy operas as well. So that's a totally different style than if we were to do, you know, Beauty and the Beast or a musical. Yes?
What are some of the approaches you use in saturation versus less saturation when you're starting to look at a different configuration of audience, whether it's a drum or arena or something like that?
Well, Michael has a great example in grad school. He had to do a production that was weird.
I actually did a show. It was Black Snow, and in the first act, the audience was on stage facing downstage, and in the second act, they were in the house as they normally would be, which, with nothing else, your magic sheet. The first day I didn't realize I needed 2 magic sheets, and the entire second act I was looking at my magic sheet upside down. Or no, it wasn't even that. We ended up using colors completely differently from what the director and I had discussed in previous meetings. So I didn't have all my channels on both magic sheets. So what I thought I was using in Act 2, I used in Act 1 and had to have my Act 1 magic sheet upside down to pick my channels. But as far as color went in that didn't really affect the color. It did in that I kind of went a little bit more saturated where I knew that the audience was pretty much going to be within inches of where the actors were going to be. And that tended to be a little bit more saturated. But as we went through the show, as we went through tech, the director changed his ideas, and everything we discussed that would happen in Act 1 happened in Act 2. So fortunately I had some really saturated colors for one act and very, very pale colors for another act, and was able to use both systems basically where I wasn't expecting to use them. But it ended up working out pretty well.